Battlefield 2, a masterpiece from Sweden. Many old Battlefield fans think of good times when they hear the title, and so do I. It was a milestone, a masterpiece, it was the game to play. And with these words of praise, welcome to the next episode of the history of Battlefield. Battlefield 2 was the next big success for DICE after Battlefield 1942. An improvement and near perfection of the then established Battlefield formula. A tactical and realistic setting, easy to learn and comprehend, but hard to master. A game that could accommodate almost everyone and every playstyle. Be a sniper, placing perfect headshots over a 300-meter distance. Be a medic, an indispensable asset to your team, reviving fallen comrades. Be a helicopter pilot, transporting troops to the front line, or provide swift close air support. Or be a fighter pilot who strikes fear into the enemy by dropping a deadly payload. But I digress. So, back to the beginning. Battlefield 2 was released for the PC on the 23rd of July 2005 and became an immediate success. Magazines threw around top scores. GameStar, one of German's gaming media flagships, gave the game a 93 out of a possible score of 100. In addition to that, it got the Platinum Award as well as the GameStar Award. Game Chronicles gave the game 97 points and GameSpy even gave it a full 100 score back then. The user ratings on Metacritic are at 8.4 of a possible 10 points, and in almost every review the game is declared to be one of the best parts of the whole series. But was the game really that great as many of us remember it to be? Certainly, it must have some flaws from today's point of view. But when you ask if the game really was the milestone many people say it was, the simple answer is yes. And now let us find out why. The game was a co-production of DICE Sweden and the newly bought mod team Trauma Studios, the creators of the impressive Battlefield 1942 mod Desert Combat, to which we dedicated a full episode. The link is in the upper right corner if you're interested. The newest entry into the Battlefield series was released only 1 year after its predecessor Battlefield Vietnam and also utilized the Refractor engine too, resulting in the game not being the prettiest available, but at the same time not being a total eyesore. Yet, the game was demanding when it comes to hardware. It required a minimum of 612 MB of RAM, a 1.6 GHz CPU, and at least 128 MB of video RAM. Laughable for today's standards, but you gotta remember, it was the early 2000s. Adding to the heavy demands were a plethora of bugs that plagued the game at launch, even surpassing the catastrophical releases of Battlefield 3 and 4 in regards to issues the devs had to fix post-launch. To make things worse, many of the bugs were already known as beta testers had pointed them out, but DICE apparently did not find it necessary to put in the effort necessary to fix known issues. A shameful trend that should continue well into the modern era of Frostbite engine games like Battlefield 4. A few hastily cobbled together patches later, Battlefield 2 was back on track and on its way to become the legendary game we know it as. Before we jump into the gameplay, a little fun fact. It was claimed that the intro sequence of Battlefield 2 was a random match played between developers. Hard to believe, I know, but I guess it's a great advert for the new battle recorder. But more about that later. After watching the intro, many will have been surprised to be thrown right into combat. The game puts you into a single-player game. If you expected the game to come with a full single-player campaign, you were disappointed. The game presents you with a minimalistic bot match to practice your skills. This fight for flags against bots is the same as in Battlefield 1942, just with a modern setting and minor AI improvements. They started following orders and stopped using bazookas against infantry. After you completed or aborted the practice mission, you are going to the main menu. That changed a lot since the early days of the Battlefield franchise. While the structure is still mediocre at best, we will find important additions, like the soldier profile. Unfortunately, I cannot show you my old profile and how it looked back in the old days. Ever since GameSpy ceased to exist and EA halted the revival of Battlefield 2, this feature became unusable, so I am forced to use an old screenshot. It is something that is nothing special today. An overview of player stats, how much and when you played, win and loss quotas, kill-death ratio, best and favorite weapon, vehicle, map, and so on. Back then, this was a special thing. Another brand new feature was the leveling system. Every action taken in the game warranted you some points, allowing you to slowly rank up and at some point unlock new weapons. Long before, games like Call of Duty made that into the primary focus of the game. The rest of the game menu was Battlefield Standard, a server browser for internet and LAN games, yes, back then local network support was the norm, a large option menu and a single player mode, which was the exact same thing as the training mode from the beginning. And then we have the community area, which might lead to a misunderstanding as this has nothing to do with social media. This area is for mods and demos. Yes, Battlefield 2 had official mod support right in the main menu. This was the second last Battlefield to officially support mods. And the demo player, aka Battle Recorder, is a feature that I miss as well. The Battle Recorder was a tool that allowed you to record everything that happened on the server during a match and offered that in a neat little file for everyone to download, allowing interested players to revisit the match played and take a close look at every last corner at every second played from any perspective. Pretty much like the demo recorder known from Counter-Strike. A feature that everyone will agree to be very useful, not only to create cool machinima videos, but also to check out if the asshole who killed you did cheat or not. But enough of that, onwards to gameplay. Battlefield 2 dared to make the step into modern warfare long before Modern Warfare. A smart move, as that proved to be the trend for the late 2000s. The predecessor setting, the Second World War, was already getting boring, and after the move to the Vietnam War, which is a niche setting till this day, moving to a modern conflict just seemed natural. However, if the move to the modern era was the smart marketing decision by DICE, or just because the mod proved to be very popular, will be a secret forever. Not only the setting and with that the weaponry was new, also the gameplay overall got a revision. A new and till this day important implementation is the squad system. What younger Battlefield players may take for granted was a tremendous innovation in 2005. Finally, you were able to play together with friends online in a comfortable manner. Coordination was made easier as orders could be given and voice over IP was available. A feature that was not standard back then. Talking to random strangers that were in the game with you was fascinating. Today I perceive it as rather annoying more than often, especially when I cannot disable it easily or at all. In addition to the squad feature, there was my beloved Commander, a special position in the game, as the Commander could rely on certain abilities like a bird's eye view of the map, flags and squads. The Commander was able to give orders to players, had a variety of possibilities to support his team or harass the enemy. One of these abilities was the scan, making every enemy visible for a brief moment, but only for himself. He could then mark the most important targets for his troops by clicking on them, picking for example a sniper position. Other options included calling in a UAV, a device made famous by Call of Duty, and it operated in a very similar manner, marking enemies on the minimap. Another important option was the supply drop, because unlike in the most recent Battlefield games, you did not auto-heal, neither did your vehicle, and ammunition was also not unlimited. Everything had to be rationed, and to restore you had to reach a supply drop sent in by your commander. But you also had to be careful, as the goods airlifted in could kill you when they dropped right onto you. The last option in the commander's arsenal was a powerful one, the artillery strike. A feature that would send anyone to the ground, because a few seconds after hearing the roaring thunder of cannons in the distance, anywhere around you all hell could break loose as a barrage of heavy ordnance shells your position. Of course, the commander was not invincible. Artillery pieces, UAV control centers and satellite arrays could be destroyed, hitting the commander where it hurts. At this point, the engineer class would come in, able to repair vehicles and damaged equipment for their respective teams. A cool but tedious job, laying mines to ambush enemies and repairing everything, even bridges that got destroyed by artillery or C4 and other explosives. Not that realistic, but it fitted nicely into the game, although it was rather unrewarding to do large repairs anyways, as the process took incredibly long time and the point reward was anything but motivating. Another reason why the engineer was one of the more unpopular classes was the armament. The shotgun made him a rather unsuitable pick for the often large open areas the fights were taking place in. Unlike the commander and squad feature, the engineer was nothing new, but still the class had been overhauled just like any other class. Another introduction to the game was the Special Operations class, equipped with a compact gun and C4, a class for everyone who loves to blow up everything that cannot outrun him. A beloved but simultaneously hated tactic was to stick C4 on the front of a vehicle, charge towards the enemy and jump out and detonate the C4. The so-called suicide buggy utilizing one of the fastest vehicles in the game. After the Spec Ops class, the game of course included a sniper, which is a rather self-explanatory thing, so let's get right on to the Assault class, which is pretty much the first and only unit with a grenade launcher that is not overpowered. Next up, we got the Machine Gunner, who got a completely new ability. Besides the imposing machine gun, he was able to supply team members. Literally everyone. Not only infantry, but also tanks and helicopters and jets, as it is custom for everyone to carry around 120mm heat shells for the M1 Abrams. The medic, a class cut from Battlefield Vietnam, made a comeback. Now not only with the ability to heal players, but also revive them using a defibrillator. The medic is actually a very important class to save tickets, and even players who may not be good at FPS games can fill a vital role. Side note for modern Battlefield players. Back then, a respawn took 15 seconds and was not skippable. So stop complaining and help out the team effort. Wait for the medics. The medic and the machine gunner, aka support class, had a pretty nifty feature. They could take out their supply bags and supply or heal every player in a small radius around them. The bag could also be dropped, instantly healing anyone or refilling anyone who picked it up. Next up we got the anti-tank soldier, equipped with a wire-guided anti-tank missile launcher capable of combating every land-based vehicle, and if the gunner was skilled enough, even converting helicopters and planes into burning heaps of metal was possible. 3 of the 7 classes included in Battlefield 2 had passive capabilities as well. When a medic, support soldier or engineer was riding in a vehicle, they either healed, supplied or repaired all their friendly units around them. This spawned interesting tactics of using vehicles as mobile cover while simultaneously getting healed and in return repairing the vehicle again. With an experienced team, you could transform a Humvee or BTR into a mobile supply point. Moving to more general gameplay changes compared to BF2's predecessors, we quickly notice that team play got a larger focus in this game. We mentioned this already with classes like the Commander and the Squad system. But where we really notice this is in the way the vehicles in Battlefield 2 work. Especially 2-seated bombers develop their full deadly potential when manned by 2 cooperating players. Although the real king of the skies were the helicopters like the MA-28 Havoc. With its 14, later 8 unguided missiles, it was a real danger to infantry and tanks alike. The co-pilot/the gunner added an extra deadly arsenal to the mix, armed with an autocannon and guided anti-tank missiles. A helicopter crew was able to diminish every enemy force swiftly if they played their cards right. Otherwise, a helicopter could become a real glass cannon. Ground vehicles such as tanks, like the M1 Abrams or T-90, could take quite a punch compared to more modern battlefields like Battlefield 3. It has to be mentioned that for balancing reasons, most of the vehicles like the 2 before mentioned battle tanks were very similar in regards to damage potential and armor. Not necessarily realistic, but usually fair. So far we covered the most important aspects of the game, but 2 important subjects are still missing. The game's factions and the maps on which they fought on. Battlefield 2 launched with 15 maps, and in a later patch the map Road to Jalalabad was added. On these maps 2 of the 3 warring factions would meet. The MEC, short for Middle East Coalition, a fictional union of mostly Arab nations, the United States Marine Corps and the People's Army of China, which I assume don't need any further introduction. Every faction came with their respective real-life equipment. As for the fictional MEC, they were armed with a loose collection of modern and Soviet-era Russian equipment. The maps on which these factions met were a diverse mix of urban engagements on maps like Strike at Karkand or large open areas like Dragon Valley. Swamp areas on oil fields, and of course Battlefield's most popular map ever, Wake Island. All these maps differed a lot, requiring the players to adopt different playstyles. While Strike at Karkand favored infantry combat from house to house, others favored long-range vehicle engagements on really massive maps. A point of critique that has been raised back in the days is that most of the maps were created using a grey and brownish color scheme, making it rather hard to see over long distances and not looking that appealing to the eye. But I would counter that it is all due to the setting. In regions like the Middle East, brown tones are very dominant in the landscape. Nonetheless, most of the maps were great, at least gameplay-wise. Even maps that limited you to ground combat always offered a multitude of ways to the objective. There was always enough cover for infantry, and colors aside, the maps all had distinguishable layouts. The game offered mod support, and soon after the release, community-created maps found their way into the online matches, enriching the Battlefield experience by a lot. More community content soon followed, including modifications that overhauled the game in its entirety. Mods like Project Reality are the ones that immediately come to mind. A mod that still has an active community and is meanwhile a standalone game, and even spawned off a spiritual successor, the first-person military simulation Squad. In addition to the community-created content, Battlefield 2 received several add-ons, but these will be covered in a separate video, because this video is already longer than any of the other episodes. But there's still something that has to be addressed. Battlefield 2 was amazing, but not perfect. The game did not only suffer from extreme bugs, but also bad design choices. Grenade spam was horrible. Every soldier could carry around up to 4 grenades, which could be refilled incredibly fast. Some weapons were too effective and some vehicles were not balanced well. Where the same basic stats in tanks can be a fair fight, the same can be really counterproductive when a small Viper helicopter has the same profile as the larger Mi-28. Other issues are some that you only really notice in retrospective. Modern comfort features like friend lists and so on did not exist. But for all its flaws, Battlefield 2 was a masterpiece for its time and stood out from the rest that was available. Most longtime fans will agree that Battlefield 2 was and is the best Battlefield game of all time. It combined nearly perfect team play, the right amount of realism, accessibility and fun. It offered great features, but was not too stuffed. And although it is rivaled by Bad Company 2 in its status as the best Battlefield, I agree with a large part of the gaming community when I say Battlefield 2 is the best Battlefield. If not for the gameplay, it is for being a trendsetter. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the history of Battlefield. A special thank you to our loyal supporters on Patreon, who of course got to see this video first. If you enjoyed today's episode, you know what to do, and maybe also check out the other episodes of the history of Battlefield. Until then, see you guys next time, have a nice day, and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.